Everything you're about to hear is for education and entertainment purposes only. Whilst we are licensed, we're not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Any advice is general advice. Equity Mates operates under Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.
Equity Mates!
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Equity.
Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates, a podcast where we explore what's possible in the world of investing. If you've just joined us for the very first time, a huge welcome to our community. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you going?
I'm very good, Bryce. Very excited for this episode. We are back with another Ask an Advisor, where we get some of Australia's top advisors in the room with us, and we put your questions to them. And today we've got a very special themed Ask an Advisor episode. It's all about how couples can manage their finances together. Bryce, you've been married for a couple of years. I've been married for about 6 months. So good time to have this conversation, I guess.
I guess so. I guess it's never too late.
I've been doing it a bit earlier, but yeah, never too late.
Never too late.
So if you're listening or if you're watching, grab your significant other, get them headphones in or in front of the computer and settle in as we unpack how couples can work together on their finances. And to help us go through it all, Glen Hare is in the studio with us. Glen, welcome back to Equity Mates.
Great to be here.
So Glen is founder of Fox Hare and has been working with a large number of the Equity Mates community now over the last couple of years. You've been a big supporter of the show, and if you are listening to this and would like to chat to Glen and the team, head to equitymates.com/advice. There is still a wait list, but you are working through that, Glen, and I think there's just such demand for what you're doing with our audience. We do really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. And we've just hired a couple more financial advisors to join the fold, so the more people we can give advice to, the better.
Awesome.
Well, let's start general. So you mainly work with, I guess, wealth accumulators, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s who are still on that wealth building journey. And for people in that time period, for a lot of people, it's the time where they're coupling up as well. So I think
for better or worse.
Yes.
So you'd be seeing a lot of people who are seeing a financial advisor for the first time, but also really dealing with money as a couple for the first time.
Yeah.
So where do you start there?
Yeah, great question. And the reality is one of the biggest financial decisions you will ever make is your life partner.
For better or worse.
For better or worse. And no doubt, those listening, often, certainly with the Equity Mates community that we've worked with, often when meeting with a couple, it's usually one in the relationship that is an avid listener of the podcast, and the other that's potentially not that engaged. So where we start with every couple that we sit in front of is not necessarily the financial piece, but as a couple, what is it that the two of you are trying to achieve from a life perspective? Whether that be starting a family, getting married, taking a 6-month sabbatical, buying your first property, whatever the case may be. All of those goals obviously have financial implications, but what we're looking at is what really excites the two of them from a life perspective, and then lead from there.
So today, Glen, we're going to cover off a number of different aspects of this, merging finances, goals, tax structures, and the like. So let's start with aligning financial goals, given that that's where you start with your couples. What practical steps can couples take to actually align their financial goals? Like, it's something that my advisor has suggested, you suggest it's like, come to us with your goals. But like, how do you actually practically suggest putting that in place?
Break it down, because again, reflecting on our demographic, as Ren, you noted, most of our members are in their 20s, 30s, 40s. So for someone in their 30s, for me to sit in front of them and go, all right, well, tell me all your life goals. What do you want to do with the rest of your life? Really quite overwhelming. But so what we would do from a practical perspective is really address the coming 12 months. What are the short-term pieces? What are some of the core goals that the two of you want to work towards over the coming 12 months? Then we look at the medium term, so typically the next kind of 3 to 5 years. I guess a I don't know if it's a trick or maybe a strategy that I use, is I often anchor on an age. So if I'm sitting in front of a couple that's 30, for example, rather than saying, what do you want to do in the next 5 years? I'll say, well, what do you want to do by the time you turn 35? It just feels different. Or if you're sitting in front of someone that's 35, what do you want to do before you turn 40? And you can kind of see that light bulb moment go, shit, 40's 5 years ago, 5 years away. What do I want to do? And then we'll look at the longer term, 5 years plus. Huge catch-all bucket, again, for our member base to think what they want to do for the latter 50 years of their life is quite challenging. We anchor on the financial goals. So, a lot of the short-term goals from a practical perspective, they're saying, I want to get a cash flow strategy. I want to start investing or build on my investment portfolio. I want to review my super. I want to make sure my insurances are sorted. I want to look at tax minimization strategies. So what we have found is for the couples that we're sitting in front of, a lot of the short-term goals are very foundational. So we often refer to it almost like a financial audit. Like, let's just review everything. And then it's the medium and the longer term where the life goals start to come into play. I want to start a family. I want to buy a house. I want to start generating a passive income. And a lot of the conversation is, okay, well, what do we need to be doing in the short term as a household in order to drive towards those medium and longer term goals? So often when working with a couple for the first time, it's pretty front loaded. Short term's pretty heavy. The medium long term is like, I'm not sure. I just want more choice around what my options may look like.
So in that establishing stage, obviously aligning on goals is really important. I imagine the other thing that you've got to do is risk tolerance for both partners, because normally if you're just doing a one-on-one with one client, you assess their risk tolerance as part of this. How do you manage it when the partners are, have different levels of risk tolerance? Perhaps they're aligned on goals, but they're not aligned on how they want to get there, I guess.
So risk tolerance is something that we'll also do align to the goal. So rather than the generic, you're a high growth, aggressive investor, or I'm a little bit conservative in terms of my approach, what we would do is, if the couple want to generate a passive income to enable them to retire early, and hypothetically the couple's 30, regardless of their tolerance for risk, I'm going to be having a conversation with them around the fact that we need to be taking on a degree of risk. We need to be looking at some higher growth strategies, acknowledging that these are longer term goals. So what I'd be doing there is, for the individual in the relationship that is self-confessed more conservative, it's an education piece. Yep, this is a higher growth strategy, but these are the reasons why that's more appropriate in line with what you've told us is important to you. And to the same token, for the individual that's maybe got a bit more of an aggressive approach to investing, I'd be mindful that they don't necessarily, if they can achieve their goals without taking on an unnecessary degree of risk, then I'd be tapering them back to something that's more appropriate.
Or they need bigger goals.
Yeah.
Or they need bigger goals.
Do you ever find yourself having to do like goal adjustment for a lot of couples in terms of adjusting short term, medium term, or just saying, guys, this isn't actually achievable at all?
Yep. All the time.
Yeah.
And I do feel like that is a huge part of what we do. And thinking about my journey as an advisor, 7 years ago, being really transparent, I used to shy away from those conversations. I used to be quite nervous about sitting in front of a couple and saying, hey, what you've shared with me is not possible. Now my approach and my belief is it's part of my role to be really open, honest, and transparent about what is possible and what is not. And more often than not, it's not so much something is necessarily not achievable, but if it isn't, I would be really clear about that. But it's more around having these trade-off conversations. So, I think about a couple that that I literally met with this morning. Young couple, 2 young kids, and they want the flexibility of renting and investing in the stock market, but they have 2 young kids, and over the next couple of years, they do inevitably want to buy their own place. But she's originally from Germany, he's from Australia, so there's kind of family obligations to go back to Europe every year, meaning that their travel bill is a little bit higher. So this trade-off conversation between, okay, we may not be able to spend the amount of money that we want to on our dream home. We might need to taper that back to give you the flexibility to be able to head over to Germany, every year or every second year. So it's not necessarily you can't do it, but it's about creating clarity as to what is achievable and what's not.
So once a couple is aligned on their goals, I imagine we get to the biggest question, or at least in my mind, the biggest question: to merge or not to merge.
Yeah,
so
that is the question.
So how do you approach this when couples come and see you?
My belief is when we start discussing joint goals, there needs to be a degree of teamwork. Be a boss, date a boss, build an empire. Like if you've got one individual that's so focused on the goals and the other that has absolutely no interest, then the chance of you as a household achieving those goals is significantly limited. And this goes even to how we manage our day-to-day banking, like our bank accounts, right? Having joint accounts, it's simple, but there is this perception of potentially kind of reduced independence. Having individual accounts, there's a degree of independence, but what do you do with those joint expenses? So if you've got individual accounts, when you go out for dinner, what do you do? When you're buying the groceries, what do you do? Who's paying for the petrol when you fill up the car? And it just creates, in my view, can create more unnecessary conflict than what's required. The joint approach or looking at both, so having joint accounts for certain expenses and then individual accounts for maybe the day-to-day, I have seen work quite well. I suppose the downside of that is you maybe do need more accounts than what you would if you had it all merged together. But that does provide a degree of independence, but also ensures there's a degree of alignment from a goals perspective as well.
So philosophically, is your starting point merge everything and then have the conversation with the couple to see how they feel about that?
Yes.
Right. And so that includes, I guess that's just merge everything. So if
like investment accounts, all that stuff.
Well, hang on.
Okay, we'll get to that. Let's just talk spending, banking, saving.
I'm just talking, and even savings. We'll get to that.
Okay, so we're not at everything.
We're not at everything. We're just talking the day-to-day.
So both, if both partners are working, their pay gets put into the joint account, and then that's the spending account.
Yeah. And
so where does my golf trip money come from that Harriet doesn't go on?
So
Harriet doesn't know about.
Harriet's not going on the golf trip, but she may be having a girls' weekend away, right? And your golf trip, if you guys are working towards, retiring early or buying a property, then your golf trip's going to impact their goals.
That's the trade-off.
So I often refer to, again, when working with a couple, household income, household expenses, household savings, household investments, regardless of, whose name it's in, whether it's individual or both, we're looking at this from a household perspective.
So then the next question a lot of people will be thinking about, and I think a lot of people go through, is monetary even split or percentage split? And like if that's contribution to mortgage, contribution to savings for the overall goal, what's your default position on that?
Well, there's no split if it's all just going in the same bucket.
Good point. Yeah. But all
right, for people that are not putting it all in the same bucket, how would you answer Bryce's question there? Like even amounts in or percentage of your take-home income?
So early in the relationship, I've seen it split many different ways, and sometimes it gets so complicated, then it just becomes, there's so many unnecessary conversations about it, I find. There is merit in early in the relationship. If one individual is earning significantly more than their other half and they want to live a certain lifestyle, they wanted to go to the nicer restaurants, they want to stay at nicer hotels when they go away, then it's their obligation to contribute more to that because their partner doesn't have the ability to do so. But if we then think about, 5, maybe 10 years into the relationship and you've got a baby, you've got a mortgage, like it becomes more challenging, right? Like the debt isn't just one of yours, it's both of yours. The baby isn't just one of yours, it's both of yours. And trying to split it, I got a pay rise, so I'm going to contribute 3% more this year, starts to become a little bit arbitrary.
Yeah.
And if I think about relationships in Australia, a de facto relationship exists when two people who are not legally married live together on a genuine domestic basis. The key to this kind of de facto relationship piece is a genuine domestic basis, and then the courts will review.
So it's not like if you're in a share house, you're not going to,
Correct,
You're all together.
Not that you necessarily need just one partner, but each their own. But it is it is something that's important to know. There is no minimum per se.
Yeah.
It is how you're managing that domestic relationship.
So we put a pin in savings and investment accounts. I think it's probably worth talking about them all in this sort of part of the conversation. So maybe let's go saving and then investing. So assuming that the couple has just decided pay into the same joint transaction account, household income, how do you then think about savings accounts?
Yep. So I think about it through a tax lens.
Nice.
So the way that I do that is if you've got a high interest savings account with your high interest savings account of choice, and you're in a relationship, and one of the individuals in the relationship is earning significantly less than the other, then that high interest savings account should be in their name to reduce their household tax bill. Because if you're earning 200 grand a year, you're in the highest marginal tax rate, then any interest that you are charged on that is going to be taxed at the highest marginal tax rate. Whereas if you simply just transfer all of your money into your partner's account who's on a lower marginal tax rate, then potentially you're reducing your tax bill to 30%. And this is a huge oversight for many couples. It's often they might have separate accounts, or to a lesser extent they might have a joint savings account. But if they just think about it from a household tax perspective, it may be more efficient just to have that account in the lower income earner's name.
Is that the same logic you apply when we get to investment accounts?
It is, yes. Yeah. So investment accounts, same concept. We're looking at the tax implications and the marginal tax rates for those two individuals. But we are mindful that for those in the relationship, their incomes may fluctuate over the course of that kind of investment journey. High interest savings account we see early on in one's wealth creation journey, but as one's wealth starts to accumulate, there's less cash, I suppose, in the household makeup, and that starts moving towards building investments, whether that be through property, shares, super, etc.
We said at the top that you're choosing your partner is perhaps the biggest financial decision that you'll ever make, for better or for worse. How do you think about protecting yourself for the worst case scenario if you're joining finances at the hip? Do you build in any sort of like slush funds or think about that at all?
Look, I'm a romantic at heart. My view is that, treat complete transparency, authenticity, communication is probably the basis of any healthy relationship, whether that be finance or otherwise. But one approach that I have seen a number of certainly our members explore and also execute is a binding financial agreement. So this is a document drafted by a law in conjunction with a lawyer that clearly stipulates if something were to happen, these are how the assets would be split. I've not seen a huge uptake through our member base, noting that most of our members are going into these are probably their first serious relationships that they're going into. But that is, if you are genuinely looking at protecting yourself from a legal standpoint, that is something that would be worth exploring. So binding financial agreement.
Nice.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I always thought that they weren't as
Rigorous.
held to as in America. Like courts will often look through them and make their own decisions.
Yeah, I believe that's the case here. Again, caveat, not a lawyer either, just a romantic. But there is, it's something to fall back on as opposed to quite literally nothing.
Yeah.
So Glenn, earlier you said you are thinking about savings accounts and investment accounts through a tax lens. So let's think more generally about tax. Love and tax, the two things closest to Bryce's heart.
Very true.
When you're merging your finances as a couple and sort of building a life together, how can you think about tax minimization or tax effectiveness? What are some of the structures or the plans you can put in place? One you mentioned earlier around putting like the high interest savings account in the lower earner's name to get a lower marginal tax rate. Yep. But are there any other things that people should be thinking about wherever they are on the journey?
Yeah. So the four would be investments in lower marginal tax rate. The lead onto that, even joint names, is better than just having it into the higher income earner's name. Spouse splitting, super contributions. So with the conversations around the super $3 million threshold, often we're looking at projections around where our members' super balances are going to go. If one is earning significantly less, and their super trajectory is likely to be lower than the higher income earner, then maybe that spouse splitting maybe a solution to avoid that particular tax. The other that doesn't get a lot of airtime is family trusts or discretionary trusts. So these are relevant for a subset of the community, but what we're looking to do here when establishing a family trust is we're investing through the trust. Any income that's generated from the trust that can then be distributed to the beneficiaries. So a conversation that I was having with a member yesterday was both of the individuals in the relationship are in the highest marginal tax rate. So when they invest through the trust, that income will be distributed to them. It's going to be taxed. It makes absolutely no difference. Yeah. If, however, one of the individuals in the relationship was on a lower marginal tax rate, then you could distribute that income through to them. And the trust gives you more flexibility for those that have fluctuating incomes. So if you're in a relationship and you know, as the best as your ability, that one in the relationship is going to continually earn less than the other, then you could argue you may as well just have the investments in their name. Because if you have it through the trust, you'd just be distributing to them forever. Whereas if you've got the investments through the trust and you appreciate that incomes may fluctuate through parental leave potentially, sabbaticals, job changes, whatever the case may be, then the trust does give you that flexibility. The other lead on from that, again referencing the conversation I had yesterday, although they were both in the highest marginal tax rate, their son's 17, about to turn 18. So there's the ability for them to now start distributing income through to their son. And they've got 4 kids. So he's the oldest, so he's the first to turn 18, which they'll be able to distribute to. So they're the key ones. So at the baseline, think about your marginal tax rates as an individual, as a couple. Think about spouse splitting to reduce potential future tax obligations, and then also trust where relevant.
So we want to talk about spending patterns and habits and some red flags or where the spending behaviours are different. And recently I was at a party actually and had someone come up. It was a great party, yeah. And someone came up and we started talking about this, and there was a level of frustration where this couple had aligned on goals, but when they sort of both said we're going to contribute, $700 a month into our savings account, that was dragged down by one partner who was going out and spending more than they'd agreed, and there was just a real sort of locking of horns.
Sorry, it can't have been that great a party if this is the
I was literally just thinking the same thing. Maybe it was early on in the night.
And were both partners coming up and having this conversation together with you?
It was. This is something I feel would be quite common.
Yeah.
And so, how do you address overspending, or when both partners aren't really aligned on what they've sort of set out to achieve?
There's always going to be one that's probably more of a spender than the other. That's okay. It's human nature. It's a product of upbringing, our surrounds, etc. So my first comment there would be: are they actually aligned on the goal? Like, does this goal actually matter to the person in the relationship that is overspending? And the lead on to that is, do they actually understand the impact that their overspending is having on the goals? And the reason, and I think the latter is, well, both are important, but what I have observed is in couples where, one will kind of manage the money, and potentially, this is generalization, maybe they're more frivolous and because they can see why savings is going to help them achieve X, Y, Z. But if they're not able to articulate to their partner, if you spend an extra $200 per week, that's an extra $10,000 per year, that's going to push back our property goal by 3 years. If they're not able to clearly articulate the implication, the impact or the implication of that overspending on what they've told or what they've agreed is important to them, then it doesn't kind of mean much. Someone doesn't want to be told just spend less for the sake of spending less without really understanding. And you need to be that specific. Don't say, we need to save $700 a week so we can buy a home. There's no framework with regards to that. But if you said, we need to save $700 a week to buy our first home in 3 years' time, and this will enable us to get there, and if they then overspend, actually we've just pushed that goal back 12 months, and if you're able to quantify that, then that's going to be a much more meaningful conversation than we just need to spend less so we can buy a home.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Hard to do sometimes.
Hard to do, but is really, really important. If you don't quantify what the impact of overspending is, it means nothing. Like, just saving for the sake of saving is not fun. For some.
Not for us, but for some.
Yeah.
So let's take a step back. That's, I guess, how you sort of manage the one spends, one saves dynamic when you're in a relationship. But let's take a step back and maybe go a little extreme, because spending is in and of itself isn't a bad thing. It's just, being aligned with your goals and all of that stuff.
100%.
But let's talk financial red flags. So for people who are early in a relationship or, are swiping on the dating apps and looking for their person, are there any warning signs that you've seen in clients coming through? Anything that you might say, that's a watch out, or that's a red flag, or yeah.
So, I mean, mindful that those that reach out to us, they've probably been on more than one or two Tinder dates with their partner. They're at a point in their relationship where they're like, I probably need to take this a little bit more seriously. But in terms of red flags, there would be three, I would argue, that probably stand out to me the most. Hiding income or certain expenses, like golf trips. Like
mine are very transparent. Very transparent.
Like you've got, this is your income and expenses is the basis of any financial strategy that the two of you are going to be working on together. You've got to be open and honest about it, and realistic. Like, if you feel like you need extra cash on a week by week basis to do X, Y, Z, call it out. Don't shy away from it. You've got to be honest. Understanding your partner's relationship with bad debt. So what am I referring to? Credit cards, personal loans, and understanding their willingness to focus on that and, bring that down at a household level, noting the impact that may have on their future goals. And the third would be the reluctance to talk about it. And My caveat to that, though, is money doesn't necessarily need to be the conversation, but the goals do. And the goals are driven by how you have those money conversations. The better you are at defining the goals and making them smart goals, really specific with dollar figures, and then working backwards from that and articulating how the financial decisions you're making is enabling, you to take 12 months off to start a family, enabling you to buy your first property, enabling you to, go on an overseas trip every year with your family. That's going to be far more exciting than again, the money conversation.
Well, Glenn, we're going to take a super quick break, and on the other side, have a look at some real life stories and then close out with some of the best and worst examples of how you've seen couples manage money. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Equity Mates. We're here with Glen Hare from Fox Hare. A reminder, if you are listening and would like to speak to Glen, his team, or any of our other hand-picked advisors in the Equity Mates network, head to equitymates.com/advice and you can fill out a form and we'll connect you with the right advisor for you. So, Glenn, you mentioned at the top that your role is not just a financial advisor, but pseudo-psychologist as well. And there's no doubt that money can cause a lot of tension in a relationship. Difference in earning capacities, differences in goals, differences in spending. So how do you see this playing out? But I think more importantly, how do you act as like a pseudo-psychologist and sort of help couples work through periods of tension?
So often it's the language that we use, and often when working with a couple, regardless of who's earning more or less, I'll refer to household income. I'll refer to household expenses. I'll refer to household goals. I'll refer to, household tax obligations. And I find that often helps diffuse, I earn more, so, should I be spending more or saving more or whatever the case may be. And the reason why I often reference, that the household is because the vast majority of the goals that couples reach out to us to help them achieve are household or joint goals. Yes, they might have, individual goals around, I want to do a marathon, or, I'm working towards a certain promotion. But the big ticket items when working with a couple, the majority are household or joint goals. So that's how I frame the conversation. And then it takes it away. It diffuses the I do this or I do that. And it's just about how much do we spend at a household level, or how much do we earn at a household level.
Yeah, I like that. So, Glenn, to help us bring some of these conversations to life, we asked you if you could bring some real life stories or some examples. Obviously, all anonymous, but we asked you to bring some of the best and worst examples of how you've seen couples handle money. Maybe let's start with some bad examples, then we can talk about some of the best. So, where does your mind go?
Yeah. So the most challenging members that we work with when it comes to love and tax is those that reach out to us because, they're the higher income earner and they feel like all of the household financial obligations sit on their shoulders and they don't want their member to be a part of the conversation. Their partner to be a part of the conversation.
Oh, okay.
And the reason their logic is that they're not interested. And just to kind of contextualize that, they're probably not interested. Like, I don't think this individual is doing anything necessarily malicious or anything like that. They just don't care. They don't care about the money. They just leave it to me, and I'll handle it. Why that's really challenging is because the goals that this one individual that we're working with that's part of a couple is, they're all joint goals. Like, they want to start a family together, they want to buy a house together, they want to retire early. Whereas I have absolutely no insight as to the partner's circumstance, like even from a legal standpoint. Like, we can't give advice to someone that's not a Fox Hare member. So we're only seeing one side of the story. And yes, maybe they're the higher income earner, potentially they're the sole income earner, but in terms of, if I again reflect on the household conversation, so one particular member I'm thinking about, married, they have one child, they're trying for a second, and I've never met the partner. So it feels like we've only got one side of the story. And even again, if I think about the tax conversation, I can't advise to invest in their partner's name because
So
they're not a
practically
member.
the statement of advice is just with the focus on that individual.
Correct. Yeah. And, even coming back to the basics around spending, maybe the partner's the bigger spender, and that's going to impact the strategy and the goals and things like that. So that makes it really hard.
So in that instance, you don't say to the partner that is a client, "Hey, this is an incomplete exercise unless your spouse comes here and we do this together."
Yeah. So we've stopped taking on those types of members.
Okay, yeah.
So we have a handful that we've worked with and will continue to work with and support the best way we can. But we are really transparent that, unless your partner is a part of the conversation, we are not seeing the full picture. They still see value in what we do just for them. But I genuinely believe that they would be in a better position if we got the opportunity to sit down and with both of them. I'm not. Those conversations are ongoing conversations, and my hope is that at one point they'll bring their partners to the table. But moving forward, and this was a decision we made a number of years ago now, when working with a couple that are in a genuine domestic relationship, that we would want to work with both.
So that's the worst case examples. What's the gold star for you?
Those that are really in love.
Romantics.
They come to meetings holding hands. And so it is those that are genuinely aligned from a goals perspective. They're very self-aware. One will say, I'm the biggest spender in the relationship. I know I need to rein it in because we're trying to work towards X, Y, Z. They support each other from an educational perspective. So if one understands a particular financial concept better than the other, like they'll explain it, really clearly and articulate without talking down to their partner. But they do genuinely look at everything from a household perspective. Like these are from an advisor's perspective, the easiest members to work with because they've got those joint accounts for the day-to-day spending. So it's simplified, it's clear. There's no kind of, I spend an extra $10 on coffee, so I need an extra $10 going into my everyday spending account. It's quite a simple practice. From an investment perspective, we can genuinely have a conversation around, is it better all in their name than your name? And there's no like, I'm a bit worried about that. So there's complete transparency around that. And they're both, coming back to the goals, really aligned on the goals. I think about, retiring early and generating that passive income or having the choice around, future work is a big conversation with a lot of our members. And it's for those members that I'm thinking about, where there's clear alignment on that, regardless of who's the higher income owner or who spends more, if that is something that's genuinely important to them, they're really aligned as to what they both need to do in order to get there.
Love it.
So while you're thinking about real stories, I'm just I'm wondering, you've mentioned transparency a few times. Have you ever had a situation where you've got each partner's spending and transactions and you've done all the work, and then without realizing it, you've sat them down as a couple and just revealed some like big spending or income secret that one partner was trying to keep secret and you had no idea was a big reveal?
Not so much income, but I have seen it from from a spending perspective. Often it's the individual that thinks they're the saver in the relationship that when they start adding up all the bits and pieces are like, maybe I'm not as good at saving as I
okay.
actually thought I was. That's the. Thankfully, we haven't seen too many skeletons.
You've never had like a storm out, you know?
No. We have had couples that we've been working with, and then they're unfortunately looking at separating, and then we've worked with them to determine, what are their options around potentially separating their assets. In some circumstances, those conversations have then not progressed, fortunately, and the couple get back together, which is really nice. So it's interesting. I find there actually are financial advisors out there that specialize in those that have been divorced. So genuinely, their entire business is focusing on I guess, divorcees. I feel like we're almost the complete opposite. I feel like we're one of the few firms that works with those that are at very, very early stages of their relationships, just reflective on the demographics. So
that's nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah, it's probably a more positive day-to-day experience.
Yeah, totally.
So, Glenn, as we wrap up today, I think one great thing about this conversation is couples, wherever they are in their relationship and wherever they are in their financial journey, there's a lot of things that they can take away. Like, even if they're not perhaps advice ready, they can sit down and start talking to their partner around goals. They can think around joint accounts and putting accounts in different names. I guess the question to wrap this up is, when is the right time for couples to come and seek advice, be it from you or from other advisors? Is it an age perspective? Is it proximity to goals? Is it time in relationship? When do you think couples should say, now is the time to bring a third person in here with some expertise?
We need a psychologist.
Yeah. Bring a third person. That conversation could go many different directions. We've spoken a lot about goals today, and that is the key. When you are starting to have conversations around working towards something that's fairly significant, that is a joint goal, that is when you should genuinely be having conversations around joining finances in some way, shape or form. Starting a family, it takes two to tango. Buying a property, that mortgage is going to be in both your names. If you're both driving towards generating a passive investment income in order to retire early, then you both need to be, again, working towards that goal. Otherwise, one's going to be retiring in their, 40s and the other's going to be, still slogging away. So it's for us is when there's alignment on goals, or when you believe that that's when you're going to start having those conversations about joint goals is the right time.
Love it, Glenn. Well, it's been great to have you back. Loved chatting through all of that, and I'm sure there are a lot of people listening who would like to speak to you guys about the position that they are in. So if you would like to speak to Glenn and the team or any of our other advisors, head to equitymates.com/advice. There's a form there. Fill that in and we'll make sure we connect you with the most appropriate advisor. But Glenn, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Thanks, Glenn.
You have been listening to an Equity Mates Media production. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. This podcast is intended for education and entertainment purposes. Any advice is general advice only and has not taken into account your personal financial circumstances, needs, or objectives. Before acting on general advice, you should consider if it is relevant to your needs and read the relevant product disclosure statement. And if you're unsure, please speak to a financial professional. The hosts of this podcast and their guests may have positions in the companies mentioned. Equity Mates Media operates under an Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.